Beneath the glittering lights of a Manhattan rooftop bar, a seemingly innocent bet spirals into a web of deceit, redemption, and unexpected love. When Ethan Drake, a charismatic Wall Street kingpin, wagers $1 million to win over an unassuming woman, he has no idea the stakes are far higher than his pride. Sophia Carter, a fierce and compassionate nonprofit leader, has spent her life battling judgment and proving her worth, only to unknowingly become the center of a cruel game. But what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted, and the line between truth and lies begins to blur? As Ethan falls deeper into the world of Bright Horizons and deeper for Sophia, he realizes that the woman he once pursued on a dare is the one thing he can't afford to lose. But when the truth comes to light, will Sophia be able to see past the betrayal, or will the damage be irreparable? In a race against time, Ethan must prove that his feelings are genuine, even as an enemy from his past threatens to destroy everything. With trust shattered and hearts on the line, one question remains: was it ever just a bet, or was it fate? The laughter of Manhattan's elite floated into the night air, mingling with the distant hum of the city below. The rooftop bar, perched atop a towering skyscraper, was a haven for power and privilege. Every detail screamed exclusivity: the flickering candlelight on marble tables, the polished, silver champagne buckets, and the glint of diamond jewelry catching the light. At the center of the revelry sat Ethan Drake, the golden boy of Wall Street. His tailored suit fit like armor, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "Another round," someone at the table called, their voice loud and self-assured. "Make it the vintage," Ethan said with a casual wave, leaning back in his seat, like a king on his throne. To the outside world, Ethan had it all: money, charm, and a life built on carefully cultivated confidence. But beneath the polished surface, a nagging emptiness crept in, a hollow ache that not even the finest champagne could drown. That's when James leaned in, his voice dripping with mischief. "Drake," he said, nudging Ethan's arm and motioning toward the far end of the bar. "Take a look at her." Ethan followed James's gaze. A woman sat laughing with the bartender, her auburn curls bouncing as she threw her head back. Her round face glowed with confidence, her full lips curling into an unrestrained smile. "Doesn't quite fit in here, does she?" James smirked. Ethan tilted his head, pretending disinterest, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. She was unlike anyone else in the room, vivid, unpolished, and magnetic in a way he couldn't define. "She's interesting," Ethan admitted, his tone measured. James leaned closer. "Interesting. Come on, Drake, I bet you couldn't get her to even notice you." Ethan's brow lifted, his pride pricked. "You think so?" James grinned, sensing a challenge. "Not just notice, date her. Better yet, marry her." The table erupted in laughter. "Marry her?" someone echoed. Incredulous. James raised his glass. $1 million if you pull it off." The air grew electric, charged with the thrill of competition. Ethan chuckled along with them, but deep inside, something about James's mocking tone ignited a simmering anger. "Marry her," Ethan repeated, leaning back with mock ease. Piece of cake. But as the bet was sealed with a cheer and a clink of glasses, Ethan couldn't shake the uneasy flicker in his chest. Sophia Carter rarely stepped into places like this. The rooftop bar wasn't her scene, but tonight was special. After months of relentless effort, Bright Horizons Foundation, a nonprofit she'd founded to support underserved children, had secured a crucial donation. She was here to celebrate, even if the glittering crowd around her felt alien. "A water, please," she told the bartender with a laugh when he offered her another cocktail. "Water," Clara, her best friend and fellow volunteer, nudged her playfully. "Sophia, live a little." "You earned this," Sophia grinned. "I'll live tomorrow. Tonight, I need to remember my name when I pay this bill." As they chatted, Sophia's laugh carried across the bar, drawing curious glances. She noticed, of course she always did, but years of deflecting judgment about her weight had taught her resilience. She didn't shrink under their stares, she shone brighter. What she didn't notice was the man watching her from the shadows. Ethan's first approach was calculated, armed with charm and a carefully rehearsed line. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked, sliding onto the stool beside her. Sophia arched an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Only when I'm deciding between chocolate cake and creme brulee." "Why?" Ethan faltered, her wit catching him off guard. "Because I think I was meant to meet you tonight." She laughed, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that both disarmed and unnerved him. "That's the best you've got. You might want to work on your game." For the first time in years, Ethan felt out of his depth. But instead of deterring him, her rejection fueled his determination. Over the next few weeks, Ethan escalated his efforts. He sent flowers to Sophia's office, accompanied by handwritten notes. He showed up at Bright Horizons events, volunteering with an enthusiasm that surprised even him. He painted murals with the kids, donated supplies, and stayed late to clean up. At first, Sophia remained skeptical. She'd seen men like him before, too smooth, too charming, too good to be true. But slowly, Ethan chipped away at her defenses. One afternoon, while painting with the children, a boy accidentally splattered red paint across Ethan's shirt. Sophia chuckled. "You're a natural." "What can I say?" Ethan grinned, his eyes locking with hers. "I thrive under pressure." For a fleeting moment, Sophia thought she saw something real beneath the polished exterior. But Ethan wasn't the only one with secrets. Sophia's unease grew. Something about Ethan's presence felt off. He was too perfect, too persistent, and the timing of his interest felt suspicious. Her instincts were confirmed when Clara showed her a photo on social media. It was from the rooftop bar the night they'd met, a candid shot of Ethan and James laughing together. The caption read, "When the stakes are high, only the bold play to win." Sophia's stomach sank. She didn't know the specifics, but she could feel the betrayal lurking just out of reach. Ethan was starting to crack under the weight of his lie. What began as a game now felt like a cruel joke, one he was playing on himself. "How's it going with your future Mrs. Drake?" James texted one night. Ethan stared at his phone, a knot tightening in his chest. "Don't call her that." James replied instantly. "Don't forget what you owe me. A bait's a bet." Sophia confronted Ethan a few days later, her voice steady but sharp. "Why are you really here?" Ethan hesitated, the truth clawing at his throat. "Because you inspire me," he said finally. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. The unraveling came swiftly after that. Clara, digging deeper, uncovered the damning messages between Ethan and James, the bet, the $1 million, the mockery. Sophia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. The flowers, the volunteering, the late-night conversations, it was all tainted. When Ethan arrived at Bright Horizons that evening, Sophia met him at the door. Her expression was ice. "What is this?" she demanded, holding up her phone. Ethan's face drained of color. "Sophia, let me explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, her voice trembling. "That this was all some sick game, that I was just a challenge to you." "It started that way." "Yes," Ethan admitted, his voice breaking. "But it's not like that anymore, Sophia. You don't get to say that," she snapped, tears streaming down her face. "Not after this." She turned and walked away, leaving Ethan standing in the dark. The following weeks were a blur of heartbreak. Sophia threw herself into her work, desperate to drown out the ache in her chest. But Ethan's absence was like a phantom, haunting her at every turn. Meanwhile, Ethan spiraled. Guilt consumed him, and he knew words weren't enough to repair what he'd broken. So he returned to Bright Horizons, this time quietly, anonymously. He coordinated donations, organized supplies, and showed up in ways he never had before, not for Sophia, but for the cause she loved. Clara found him one afternoon unloading boxes. "You've got some nerve showing up here," she said, arms crossed. "I'm not here to win her back," Ethan said quietly. "I'm here to help." Clara studied him for a long moment before sighing. "You've got a lot to prove," Sophia began, hearing whispers of Ethan's efforts. At first, she dismissed them as guilt-driven gestures, but as the weeks passed, his consistency made her question everything. One evening, she found him in the storage room. "You've been busy," she said, her tone cautious. Ethan looked up, startled. "I didn't think you'd want to see me." "I don't," she admitted, "but I need to know why you're doing this." "Because this place matters to you," Ethan said simply, "and because you matter to me." Her walls softened, but they didn't crumble, not yet. When a critical grant fell through, threatening Bright Horizons' survival, Ethan used his connections to organize an emergency fundraiser. The event was a whirlwind success, raising more money than Sophia had ever imagined. When she saw the results, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to feel, hope. But before she could thank Ethan, James arrived, his smirk as sharp as ever. "Does she know how it all started?" James sneered, savoring the moment. Sophia froze, her eyes darting between James and Ethan. "What is he talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan stepped forward, his face pale. "Sophia, I can explain," James cut him off. "It was a bet. $1 million if he could marry you." Sophia's breath hitched. "Is that true?" Ethan nodded, his voice breaking. "It started that way, yes, but it's not like that anymore. I love you." The pain in her eyes was unbearable. "You used me," she said, her voice cracking. Without another word, she walked away. Months passed. Ethan continued his work at Bright Horizons, proving his commitment through action, not words. Slowly, Sophia's anger gave way to curiosity, then cautious hope. One evening, after a long day, she found him cleaning up in the main hall. "You didn't have to stay this late," she said. Ethan smiled. "I wanted to. It's the least I can do." Sophia hesitated, her walls finally crumbling. "You've been consistent. That's hard to ignore." Ethan's breath hitched. "I'll never stop trying." A year later, Bright Horizons thrived, thanks to their combined efforts. At the annual gala, surrounded by the children whose lives they'd changed, Ethan knelt before Sophia. "For real this time," he said, holding out a ring. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "Yes." Their wedding was a simple affair, held at Bright Horizons. As they danced, Sophia leaned in and said, "Who would have thought a bet could lead to this?" Ethan smiled. "Best gamble I ever made," and for the first time, it wasn't a lie.